6 months old.
What's his resting pose? It must be like 10.
I think they gave a thumbs up to us.
All right, hello. My name is Keagan McClelland. I'll be moderating this panel, which is titled Zero Knowledge Proofs on Bitcoin. I've worked on and around Bitcoin for a number of years and am very interested in the topic, and I will let the rest of the panelists introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm David Seroy. I'm with Alpine Labs, and we're building ZK rollups on Bitcoin.
I'm Ilya. I do product at Starkware. I can also swim and drive.
My name is Ying Tong, and I'm one of the co-founders of Ideal. Ideal is also building trust-reduced Bitcoin bridges, and I do mostly applied cryptography, zero-knowledge proofs.
Okay, so the question I want to start off with is that, given that this panel is titled Zero Knowledge Proofs on Bitcoin, I am very interested in like the zero knowledge proof primitive. But one of the observations that I have is that every single panelist up here is building Bitcoin bridges. And so the question that I have is, what is it about the Bitcoin bridge that makes it kind of like patient zero for zero knowledge proofs on Bitcoin?
I mean, the idea of creating like some sort of trustless bridge has been the holy grail in Bitcoin and in our industry forever. Like back in 2014, Blockstream, some of the major Bitcoin OGs, they had this vision that we could create these side chains or these bridges that go from the layer one into a different layer two, and we can get, privacy or big blocks or, DeFi or, all of these different concepts. And so the idea of being able to create a trustless bridge has always been the holy grail, but it was never actually possible until we had this notion or these concepts of zero knowledge proofs. So that to me is kind of why it's like patient zero. Like this is the holy grail that I think our industry has always been building towards, and we're kind of on the brink of being able to build practical implementations of it.
And really, the superpower of the ZK snark primitive that we're exploiting here is succinctness. So being able to compact the state of the site system and still check that it's valid and still check that its state transitions are well formed. We can do this very efficiently using zero knowledge proofs. There's best-in-class proof systems like Groth16 and Perry that are constant size in the relation being proven. And so this allows us to verify arbitrary state transitions in a very limited compute, such as Bitcoin.
Nothing to add.
Very succinct of you.
So kind of a follow-up to that then, what is it exactly that in what ways do zero knowledge proofs play a role in each of the designs that your teams are putting together?
I'll let you go.
I guess the key property of zero knowledge proofs that is used is the fact that they're succinct to verify. So it's a primitive that allows you to compress basically infinite computation into one block. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that the verifier program is a fixed program, so setting it up for the bridge is much easier than constantly having to import execution of arbitrary VM code. That's my take.
And verifying a ZK snark directly in Bitcoin script is really not very straightforward. Bitcoin script is missing big int arithmetic and opcat and lots of opcodes we might want. And therefore, I think all of us are sort of interested in BitVM3 style constructions in which the snark verifier is actually taken off-chain into a garbled circuit and then optimistically verified on-chain. And we can go into details if we want.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the basic overall design of like I believe, garbled circuits are something that at least two, if not all three of you are pursuing in somewhere. No, Ilya, do you want to talk a little bit more about the design that you guys are putting together?
Yes, our design is whatever the people around me will build.
So what are the people around you willing to build? That's the essential question.
Let's ask them.
Well, I think for context, right? So just to be clear, it's like Bitcoin can't natively verify zero knowledge proofs. For a layman like myself, that means that it struggles to do something like multiplication. So we have to kind of hack in some sort of ability for Bitcoin to reason about zero knowledge proofs. And we do this through something called like an optimistic ZK verification. And the family of products that have kind of allowed us to do this is something called BitVM, called BitVM. There was a trade-off to all these different BitVMs. Like I think you heard Ilya mention BitVM 3. So BitVM 1 kind of says we can have Bitcoin reason about zero knowledge proofs, but it takes a long amount of time. It could take 6 to 12 months to verify a zero knowledge proof. So then we kind of squeezed that constraint and said, well, okay, we can get that down to maybe we can verify these zero knowledge proofs in 1 to 2 weeks, but the cost on chain on Bitcoin is very high. And then we kind of squeezed that, and then we said, okay, it's not going to take a long amount of time with BitVM 1. It won't be high on-chain costs like BitVM 2, but it will, be larger off-chain storage requirements. So each kind of iteration has been a superior trade-off that allows Bitcoin to verify these zero-knowledge proofs. And that's kind of at the bleeding edge is this concept within BitVM that we call garbled circuits, which is kind of the most efficient and optimized way with the lowest amount of overhead that Bitcoin can reason about these zero-knowledge proofs.
By the way, since this is an Ethereum conference, I assume most people are familiar with the design of optimistic rollups. So BitVM 1 and 2 are very, very similar to that. The challenger basically asks the person who asserted that they deserve funds to seek and destroy any faults in their execution. And the major breakthrough with BitVM, which leverages garbled circuits, is that the fact that you don't need this game anymore and you can defer any computation and most of the interaction off-chain. So it's a very substantial breakthrough.
BitVM 3 is still optimistic, but as you said, it moves more of the work off-chain. And so at the highest level, the API we want is that if some operator posts an invalid ZK snark on-chain, then anyone can learn the secret preimage of some hash. And having learned this secret preimage, they can then slash the operator. That's the top level API primitive that we're trying to achieve. So because there is no way to natively verify a ZK snark, what we do is we put the verifier in a garbled circuit such that when evaluated on an invalid proof, the garbled circuit reveals this preimage off-chain. So the process of challenging, of evaluating the garbled circuit is completely permissionless. And anyone who evaluates an invalid proof using the operator's garbled circuit is able to slash the operator on-chain. So high level, this is how ZK proofs fit into the architecture of BitVM 3 bridges. So it's still optimistic because we have to wait for some challenger and some evaluator to actually slash the operator. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems reasonable to categorize all of this as like the zero knowledge proofs, and really the succinctness is the key property that you guys are after, is really just a means to an end to build these sort of trustless two-way pegs. So maybe one of the questions I want to start with in that direction is, why should people be interested or excited about this ability to create two-way pegs in Bitcoin?
I mean, I am a Bitcoiner, and there are special properties that Bitcoin has that other assets in our industry do not. Many people have just kind of, begrudgingly just admitted that Bitcoin is a special snowflake. And so even if we build these things like, snarks and DeFi and, whatever other stuff in the Ethereum conference, there is a missing component there that it is more important to have this stuff on Bitcoin. Like, it is the largest, it is the most important, it's the most untapped market. It has, because of its properties, its monetary properties, it probably has the best chance of actually disrupting, the monetary order. Like, it's just frankly more important that Bitcoin has access to these things, these trustless bridges, than the rest of our industry. That may be a hot take at an Ethereum conference, but that's what I feel.
Is there a second best?
There is no second best.
Why these trustless or trust-reduced two-way pegs are interesting is because they're just strictly better than any alternative that exists today. The most widely used kind of Bitcoin DeFi construction is wrapped Bitcoin, which is just a multi-sig bridge. And there's a threshold assumption there, K of N honesty, meaning that K of N signers could just steal your funds. These BitVM constructions improve the trust assumptions greatly. For deposit safety and deposit liveness, we only have a 1 of. For deposit liveness, we have an N of N liveness assumption on our signers. For deposit safety, we have just a 1 of N honesty assumption. And then for withdrawals, so getting your money out of the bridge, all we have is a 1 of N honesty assumption on the operators. So BitVM 3 is a way to gain a strict improvement on the security assumptions over any other existing solution today.
So I want to actually, I heard an argument for why Bitcoin is important, and I heard an argument for why this trustless two-way peg is better than like maybe some sort of wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum type of bridge. But like, let's motivate even deeper than that. Why do we want bridges at all? Forget how good the design is. Forget bridges to where, like bridges from Bitcoin versus bridges from Ethereum. Like, what is it about the bridge? What does it unlock for us as users of Bitcoin?
I mean, the Bitcoin ecosystem is extremely conservative and they're very hesitant to perform any protocol changes. So it really narrows the functionality of Bitcoin to digital gold, to a store of value. But it turns out that some people want to do more with their Bitcoin. They might want to borrow stables against it. Maybe they want to transact privately. Maybe they want to employ other DeFi protocols. So bridges, they just let you do that in another environment. And you really need to optimize the security of the bridge so people are comfortable and they don't feel that they're foregoing their Bitcoin in order to have these extra abilities.
For me, there are certain values that are ingrained into the ethos of Bitcoin. And at its core, I would say one is Bitcoin as a monetary revolution, and then also this more cypherpunk revolution of privacy. And as Ilya kind of alluded to, like there are certain things that may be required to necessitate these monetary revolutions and these cypherpunk revolutions. And if we cannot change the base layer of Bitcoin because we don't want to, or it's too risky, or for whatever reason, the only kind of seemingly plausible way to kind of like further perpetuate these ideals that I think everyone in Bitcoin is aligned with is through some sort of bridge. And it has to be a bridge with the absolute most trust minimized properties possible. So for me, I want to see privacy extended. I want to see Bitcoin as money extended. And I think a reality is that finance is kind of the anchor that must be carried if money is to be succeeded. And so simply just having the attributes of sound money is not good enough if you want to undermine, the entire global monetary order. And I do. So.
Yeah, I think a really sort of accurate signal is just how popular wrapped Bitcoin is. Even though it's just a multi-sig, even though the security assumptions are really strong, people are using it to get loans. People are using it to trade on DeFi AMMs. And I think just switching to a strictly better and more secure option has really real sort of implications on which users this bridge is accessible to. So institutions, custodians who need to fulfill certain legal requirements might find a trust-reduced bridge might find the multi-sig just impossible to use, and a trust-reduced bridge as a viable option. And yeah, I really echo David and Ilya's points on bringing privacy to Bitcoin. I think, whatever we do on Bitcoin has a huge impact on the rest of the ecosystem.
So one of the things that I'm hearing right now is that, the goal is to try to maximize people's like financial like sovereignty, maybe their agency. And Bitcoin allows this through some of its other like principles and values, as do maybe some other cryptocurrencies with just different trust assumptions. And Bitcoin has the lowest set of trust assumptions, so it has the highest amount of it has cemented these values most strongly. But it sounds like also that if we want to undermine the global monetary order, as it were, that finance is a key innovation in the sort of money stack or the economic stack that needs to be, brought forward. And that in order to bring that about, we need these bridges, presumably because the side systems that we're building bridges to is in some way enabling these decentralized financial interactions. My next question really is, maybe if you could each describe sort of like your idealized version of a side system that you might build a bridge to, and kind of tie it back into those financial goals that you might have. Maybe give specific examples, something that users could get excited about. Not necessarily like this. I mean, no timelines. I'm not asking you to promise anything, but like paint a very concrete picture of like what users will be able to do should one of these bridges be able to be correctly and stood up in production.
I'm happy to go, but you guys want to go reverse order?
Yeah, I think really the possibilities are endless. You can verify arbitrary state transitions using BitVM bridges. At Ideal, one side system that we're very interested in is shielded CSV, shielded client-side validation. And this is a protocol that shifts the bulk of the responsibilities of validation to the client side and only uses consensus for enforcing double spend prevention. So this protocol is really lightweight, high throughput payments, and fully private, and almost fully client side. So we're excited for protocols like this that maximize user agency and privacy, and this would be one of the first site systems we want to bridge to from Bitcoin.
For me, in addition to what Ying said, I think the site system should have a consensus protocol that is DAG-based, and the DAG should be very wide, because I think that's the best way to counteract MEV, which I think is going to be very important in finance. And I think it's sort of an understated development in blockchain, that you can have consensus protocols that really moderate the effect of like the classical model of sequential monopolies in current blockchains. I think it will be a major breakthrough.
Could you define for the audience what MEV is and why we should want less of it?
Yeah, I don't know if we want less of it. In a nutshell, what it is the people who produce the blocks, they have an unfair advantage because they get to decide what goes into a block, and this advantage is exacerbated if at every point in time there is one person with a monopoly on what happens next. So in a world where there is no such one entity, it's more fair. And a lot of the value that this monopolist can generate can be kicked back to users or just annihilated, which I think is very important for high-frequency trading and generally financial systems.
So my kind of ideal setup for a bridge is one that is radically unopinionated, where you could have a bridge that goes from the Bitcoin layer 1 into any sort of expressive ecosystem that you prefer. If you like the EVM, great. If you like shielded CSV, amazing. If you like Cairo and Starkware, great. And everybody can kind of be sovereign and choose, which sort of set of trade-offs that they want, yet they can all share a unified bridge. You can kind of cross-compose with each other. That is like kind of the grand vision and the ideal vision. In the short term, you're probably going to see these more just like, here's a bridge, it goes into an EVM environment. But the long term is one where you have kind of, you're radically unopinionated in kind of which environment that you want to go into. And none of them would be a second-class citizen to the other. In terms of concrete use cases, like people have been talking about DeFi for years, but I think really if you're like on the bleeding edge of seeing what's happening, we're really on the brink of these things structurally outcompeting TradFi without any sort of random tokens and shenanigans. Like I think within the next, even 6 months, I think that you're going to see things like, Bitcoin-backed loans in like the low to single digit interest rates, not variable, but fixed interest rate maturity. I think that you're going to see DEXs and spot markets for BTC actually be able to outcompete, things like Coinbase and Binance, without incentives, without like impermanent loss. Like there are some radically cool things that are happening where it's no longer cope, where we say use DeFi, it's sovereign, it's decentralized, but you're actually just like hemorrhaging money and it's a worse solution. Like I think that these solutions are actually on the brink of again, outcompeting the alternatives. The last thing I'll say on this is account abstraction is an insanely powerful concept for actually abstracting away the painful UX of things like seed phrases and ledgers and hardware wallets, and having like the high security and non-custodial with like a Venmo or Cash App like experience. And that is just a game changer.
I think it's a great point by David that lots of new DeFi primitives and protocols can be enabled using Bitcoin bridges, and in particular using more secure Bitcoin bridges. So if the participant in this loan or this trading protocol can be their own operator and can contribute to the security of their own deposit and withdraw, then they will be way more likely to participate. And that's why better underlying primitives, such as Argo, like shrinking the cost of these protocols and making them more efficient on-chain has such a huge difference in the range of use cases that are enabled. And in Argo, our garbled circuit is 15.5 megabytes. Anyone can be their own operator. And with this design, we're fundamentally, qualitatively changing the types of bridges that are possible and the types of applications that people will feel secure using.
I want to follow up on something that David just said, where that you think that within 6 months that we will see changes where sort of DeFi will be able to essentially outcompete TradFi in terms of just the actual product without having to appeal to any sort of idealism about decentralization or privacy. What in the landscape has actually changed that makes DeFi actually legitimately more competitive on the grounds of pure finance, as opposed to appealing to the more cypherpunk roots?
I think one thing with like say pool-based models like Aave or what Compound pioneered, this idea of what I call like permissionless capital formation. Like you are actually able to see in these pools that they're being able to borrow it, I think it's like 3.75% right now. And part of that is there really is this idea where if you just create this open permissionless pool where, yeah, sure, big institutions could come in, or small people that have $10 or $1, and it could be all around the world. Like this idea that people actually demand things like stablecoins, that they want to stay on chain. They're not using stablecoins because they're forced to. They prefer to, and because they have this open access to these markets like Aave, like there really is this idea that this permissionless open ability to just attract in deposits has been extremely successful at driving liquidity. There's also kind of more, maybe I'll pause there because I don't want to get too into the weeds.
Well, unfortunately, we are actually at time. So I hope that this discussion was like interesting for people. I know that it was, maybe titled Zero Knowledge Proofs, but I think at least with the speakers that we had in the room, I wanted them to at least speak on the things that they were, interested in and actually like building. And while zero knowledge proofs were a key ingredient to that, I think that the implications of it are a little bit more interesting for the audience. So hope that was the right direction.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys around the conference.
Thank you.